Barbara Buffaloe is Columbia's mayor, serving in her second term. She was first elected mayor on April 5th, 2022. Mayor Buffaloe is passionate about sustainability and community development and leads initiatives to create a greener, more resilient city. Before becoming mayor, Barbara was the city's first sustainability manager. Columbia Fire Department's fire chief, Brian Schaeffer, was named fire chief on August 19, 2024. Chief Schaeffer has more than 35 years' experience in the fire service, previously serving as assistant fire chief and fire chief of the Spokane Fire Department in Spokane, Washington, from 2005 to 2024. Fire Chief Schaeffer is committed to helping find innovative ways to protect the health of Columbia residents and firefighters. And when she gets here, Columbia Police Department Chief Jill Schlulde became Columbia's first female police chief when she was appointed on November 15, 2023. Chief Schlulde has served as a Columbia police officer beginning in 2005, then police sergeant, deputy chief of police, and assistant police chief. Chief Schlulde is committed to safeguarding our community and leading her team with unwavering integrity. Welcome, Mayor Buffaloe, Chief Schaeffer, and Chief Schlulde.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kathy. And David, you want me just to get in? Just nod your head, I'm assuming. Yes. Okay. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having us on. This is Mayor Buffaloe. Sorry, I'm like the really tiny person here at the very back of the screen, in case you can kind of see her arms. I realized we got together so we could like play off of each other, and then I'm really far away. So sorry, it's not up close to my head. I wanted to kind of go over a little bit about Proposition 1. For those of you who were at the League of Women Voters Forum, I'm going to cover a lot of the same things, but really wanted to leave time for questions and answers. So I'm going to go over a little bit about like how we got to proposing Proposition 1 to the voters for August 4th. And then I've got my fire chief, Brian Schaeffer, will talk about the needs for fire, and police chief Jill Schlulde is just running in. We'll talk about the needs for our police department. And then I figured I'd talk a little bit also just covered our general fund and some of the questions that have come up over the last few weeks, and then leave it up for questions. So the first point is something that I've been making a lot, even before we started talking about Proposition 1, was about the growth of our city. So I came here in 1998. Our population was under 80,000. We didn't have it's summertime, like right now, it would be dead, right? Every student went home. It was quiet. It was a town. And fast forward now, we're about a population of over 130,000, which is about 160,000 actually daytime population. And with that, we've grown into a city. And unfortunately, like so many other things, our city staffing levels have not kept up with that growth. And I'm not even just talking about police and fire, which are like our foundation of support services that we give to our community, but also in public works, right? The people filling potholes, in recycling and trash, the people picking up our trash, our linemen, like we just haven't kept up with the staffing levels for that. Because for the longest time, our philosophy was like, this is what we've been doing with what we've got. Let's just figure out how to allocate the resources we have to the needs that we have and plan from there. Well, so 2 years ago, I mean, you all know, I was elected in 22. Constantly, one of the things I always was hearing was like, we are having so many vacancies in public safety and in streets. Like we had like one guy in the mechanic shop or two, like there was not a lot of people in these jobs. And the thing we kept on hearing was because our pay was not competitive with other cities or even private industries in town. And so we did a classification and compensation study, looked at what should our pay ranges be, what should our employees be making, and then how can we get us there? And so in 2024, or for fiscal year 24, we adopted a classification and compensation plan that basically shifted everyone's wages up. It looked at how can we not just be behind the market, but how can we lead the market? And so for us, that really helped a lot. I mean, I think Chief Schlulde will talk about when she took over, there was like 40 vacancies in the police department. And now, like last year, they ended the year with like 5. And so, like, obviously, there's turnover with employees and retirement. But that point that we made about investing in our employees really helped us with our recruitment for people to apply to jobs, as well as our retention to people in those jobs. Well, fast forward, right? So a couple years ago at the same time, we also started talking about what is it that we need to do to be planning for our future growth, right? So as a former sustainability manager, planning for the future needs, how to be resilient is a big part of like where my method of my madness goes. And so the city manager was talking to the police chief and new fire chief Brian Schaeffer and asked like, what is it that you need in police and fire for the growth of our city, not just for today, but in the future? And this was big because like even back in like 2012, we were talking about the police department at the time was like, we need 50 new cops. And it was like, okay, well, we don't have money for 50 new cops. And it was just kind of like, we need more. And so this was the first time that the city manager asked for our police and fire chiefs to say, what's your plan? Like, who do we need to be today? Who do we need to be in 30 years? Like, what should we be planning for this growth? And they came up with their plan, which is where we kind of came up with the Proposition 1 that's proposed for August 4th. So I'm going to let them talk about like the plan that they gave the city manager and like what that means for our community. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we review our budget. So Brian, if you want to go.
Sure. So exactly what the mayor said occurred. It was a true conversation between the city manager and in my case myself. When I first came here, he wanted to know what the gaps were. Our gaps were in 4 buckets. One was staffing. We haven't added and become a resilient agency since really the beginning of the Columbia Fire Department. We haven't grown for probably 30, 40 years to the level that we should be as an urban fire department. So we asked our staff, the people that were actually doing the work day in, day out. We brought a software package into the organization that helps us model different deployment methods, which essentially for us, the big red truck is our Swiss Army knife that we use to deliver service day in, day out. So how many people do we need on that piece of equipment to deliver service that is safe, but adds to the most, the best outcomes for the incident that the person is suffering, whether they're trapped in a house or involved in a structure fire or in a car. Yeah. Or suffering a medical problem. Like we were talking before everybody got on about falls in the assisted living facilities. 4 people is the standard. It's a national standard and we have 3. So adding 42 firefighters to the fire department's budget allows us to staff every neighborhood fire station with 4 people in every company and gives us the flexibility to accomplish what we need to accomplish on those emergencies faster and safer. So if it's a structure fire, the standard, the national standard and the OSHA standard is that if we send 2 people into an immediately dangerous to life and health atmosphere, think of superheated gases and smoke, we have to have 2 people outside. Today, when we respond to that situation, we can't send people inside until we get 2 fire trucks there. If this proposition passes, we'll be able to send 2 people in as soon as we arrive and be compliant with the standard. Additionally, that allows us to do our work faster. So in the case of a cardiac event, we could do a 1280 kg the same time that we're managing an airway, the same time that we are talking to the hospital, and the same time that we're starting an IV or giving pharmaceuticals. So everything changes for us in the best way for the patient with adding 42 people to the system. The second is our fire stations, the facilities. Many of them haven't been touched since the 70s. We have one that was built in 57 and 2 that were built in 71 and that are in dire need of replacement. Much like you're going to hear from the police chief about her facility, ours are in the same fashion. We have mold. They were never suited for female firefighters. They were never suited for dealing with the consequences of like the pandemic. We had the pandemic running through our fire stations because they had congregant living. We need to have individual bunk rooms. That's what the standard is now. That's what this workforce requires now. And then lastly, in a fire station, you can imagine, like earlier, our folks come back from a structure fire, all those carcinogens are on their gear. Our new fire station that we built on the south side of town, and even Station 10, have separate areas to clean and keep that gear separate from where the living areas are. In our current Station 4, 2, and 6 that we intend to replace, everything's together. So right where they eat is right next to all those carcinogens and is right next to the fire apparatus that's spewing out diesel smoke. So we need to get that fixed. That's the second part to the stool. The third part is our technology. We have not been able to ever budget for the technology changes that are coming at us every year. We have another unfunded mandate that requires a specific way that we report. We have EKG monitors that need to connect to our patient records, that need to connect to the ambulances so that we don't ask you the same questions 3 or 4 times, and that the data is captured to the emergency department. All of those updates and those changes, when they come, require us to do an emergency budget ordinance essentially and go to our city manager and ask for those funds without having a way to actually plan. This creates a technology plan for the police and fire departments where we can actually depreciate the cost of those pieces of equipment throughout a period of time, and we can put that trusted and proven piece of equipment that runs on technology in our firefighters' hands and know that it's going to work, instead of relying on a 5 or 10-year-old computer that certainly may not work. And then the last part is the pension, and I'm sure you'll hear about that from Jill as well, that our firefighters or police officers have a pension that is unfunded. There's a lot of liability there. And if we had the sales tax, we would be able to put more money down and essentially become compliant with what the actuaries say is healthy and make us solvent into the future. I'll pass it over to the police chief here.
Hi, so yeah, as Chief Schaeffer said, our needs at the police department are very similar, and that's not an accident. We've just been in the same struggle with trying to find a way to keep up with the growth of the city. The mayor mentioned, we've been talking about needing 50 more police officers for more than a decade, and really hard to dig out of that hole during the years when hiring and retaining folks was hard. From about 2014 to probably about 2022, the hiring and retaining was tough in law enforcement, particularly tough. We seem to have come out of that lull pretty significantly. In the last fiscal year, we hired 26 officers just in 1 year. In that same year, we've had 6 retirements. We did have 6 people that left for other reasons. But we're, like just Brian said, we're constantly trying to stay caught up, and we've done a really good job of digging out of that hole. The problem that we have now is just that capacity problem. So trying to address the calls that are coming in constantly for service with the staff that we have. One morning this week, I had a sergeant in my office earlier this week, and the sergeant told me that she started her shift the day before with 6 police officers. That is woefully insufficient for a city this size. And that's because if we have a couple people call out sick and we had a couple people that were already approved to go on vacation, that's where we're at right now as a city. So our plan would be, we need more than 50 officers at this point, obviously, but trying to get those 50 in the first 3 to 4 years, which I think we can actually do more than that, but I think that's a great goal, first tier goal. I certainly think we can achieve that, coupled with the ability to then raise our starting salaries and put our folks in a pay plan that keeps people here. We don't want to just become the training ground. We're very blessed. We each have our own fire and police academies that have really, really helped with, I think, recruiting and retention. But if our pay is not keeping up with the rest of the cities, which the mayor mentioned, and she's exactly right. We've made incredible gains in pay in the city for all of our different positions. We really tried to get aggressive. The city manager's gotten really aggressive with basically enacting the class and compensation plan study that we did several years ago, and that really helped. But just within a couple of years of making those gains, we went from being about third in the state for police officer starting pay. Now we've slipped clear back down to 9 again. So we're kind of in that bidding war with a lot of these other cities that we compete with for staff. Brian mentioned too, my building, if you don't know it, that building was never meant to be a police department. It is about 93 years old. If you look, it's a very strange building. So the front that you kind of usually see in pictures, actually the fire department was on that 7th Street side where all the glass is. We have pictures of the old horse-drawn fire trucks in there. And when I started, the 3rd floor was the water and light department. So it's been remodeled pretty conservatively, probably 15 times. We don't even know, some rooms you go in and you try to adjust the thermostat, and even building maintenance has told us they have no idea what room that actually changes the temperature in. So our HVAC system has a lot to be desired. We've had a couple bouts of no heat or cooling, and it's just kind of gotten to the point that we've outgrown it and we really need to look at moving to a different facility. The good news is, the silver lining for us is, we do have the IBM building that the city owns that is a great location and would work really well for our needs. It's 94,000 square feet. It's on about 13 acres. It has about, I think, almost 800 parking spaces. If you go in that building, which I think there's going to be a news story that's going to air this weekend on KOMU, I did an interview with one of their reporters down there. It's going to seem very eerie because it looks like there was an alien abduction, because all the desks and chairs and TVs and conference rooms, all that still exists. All that furniture is still down there. So significant savings for the city to basically upgrade that building to meet our needs rather than going out and trying to buy property and build from the ground up. So I think when we did a needs assessment in 2012, so that's what, 14 years ago, the cost to tear down the downtown facility and rebuild it was about $60 million. I would guess that's probably double at this point. So this building, they think we could get into and do everything we need. That's equipment, all the bells and whistles, between $35 and $40 million. So there's a very significant savings to the city. We're in the same boat with technology. We have body worn cameras. Those do way more than they used to. They do more than film. There's features now that a camera can write a first draft of a report for you as an officer. They can translate up to 32 languages in real time. So there are some really neat, helpful efficiency technology upgrades that are out there, but of course all those things cost money. Another interesting aspect for me is I have to save all this evidence. So all the video and digital photos that you think of that we take and amass, that has to be stored somewhere. And we can't store it on flash drives in a room or a drawer someplace. That's just not a best practice. So the evidence storage that we do pay for digital evidence just becomes increasingly costly. Same issue with the pension. One thing that I think is very important about this plan too is we know we're not going to hire 50 officers and 42 firefighters in year 1 or probably year 2, right? So those years when we're not using all that money for personnel, we really want to focus on paying down some of those pension liabilities and digging out of that hole even more quickly. The sooner we get out from under that cloud, that just frees up more money in our current payroll to hire future folks, which we're definitely going to need to do to keep up with growth.
And then before I open up for question and answer, I wanted to talk about some of the things that we've seen out there. So when we first started asking for this plan from the chiefs for what it is that, they told us what they needed, this estimate around like 38 million needs annually, we asked the finance department, okay, well, where can we get this money? Right? Like, this is not just magic, so first the city manager tasked all the general fund departments. So police and fire make up about 48% of our general fund. And that's because our community is yes, our safety, our health and safety is the most, we need to have these basic services. Public Works and Public Health are our next two kind of pieces of the pie of the general fund that use the most funding. But that other half of the pie, the general fund, is 16 different departments. So, we looked at, okay, what can we do to reduce costs, right? So they've reduced costs in everything except for personnel. So travel and training is down, materials is down, like they're reducing costs and all these things to try to find these savings. And I don't know if you saw, there was a guest commentary in the paper, it's like, people are like, well, just cut things, like cut sustainability, cut cultural affairs, cut, Office of Violence Prevention. Like none of that even equals up a couple of cops. Like those are not big drains on our general fund, and they add to the vitality of our community, right? They show the cross-departmental collaboration that we do across the silos. And so we looked at, okay, well, could we do, if we were to raise funds, the state funds, as we all know, is inconsistent, right? The $1 million that they promised to downtown safety, no idea where that is and if it's ever coming to us. Appreciate Stephen Weber for getting it for us, but like, I'll be excited if we get that check. And like from the federal government, you all know we're not seeing nearly as many federal grants coming in as we did in previous administrations. And also that goes to show the sort of insustainability of that. Like a COPS grant, if it gives us 100% for a COP 1 year, the next year it will only give us 75% of that salary. So eventually it weeds itself down and it's on the city. So when we thought about what funding revenues do we have, I mean, you all know in Missouri, we don't have a lot of options. There's not a lot. And, when we talked about a property tax, so property taxes, even if we were to double our rate, that would only bring us in another maybe $10 million a year. And if you guys are following what's happening in Jefferson City, I don't know that we're going to have property taxes, and I can't, you know what I mean? I can't rely on some of these traditional funding sources. So a sales tax, for us, city council was very concerned about it, right? Because we know it's a regressive tax. But for us, it was really limited on what can we do. And so our economist in the finance department was able, because we buy data from MasterCard. This is, by the way, really weird stuff that you find out, which you never thought you were ever going to know. But like our economists, we purchase data through our Convention and Visitors Bureau to find out where do people come from that are spending money. And so we're able to show that about a third of sales taxes are paid from people outside of the city limits. Now, this is made from assumptions based on that MasterCard data, but you're able to extrapolate it out, right? I can't tell you that like, my cousin in California bought a Coke at McDonald's. So thus it's not that detailed, like a dollar bill I can't trace, but your credit card data were able to show that a third of sales taxes are actually from people outside. And that's important to know because since we have things like True False Film Festival, Mizzou football games, all of those things that do have additional demands on police and fire, right? Those are also public safety needs that are being supported by people outside of the community. And so looking at that, we looked at what would a 1/4 cent sales tax bring in? What would a 1/2 cent? What would 3/4? What would 1? And we went with the 1% because it gets us to our needs within the 5 years and gives us a sustainable funding source for police and fire, while also alleviating some of our general fund, because we will continue to contribute general fund dollars to police and fire. But as we continue to grow, I know I still need more things in public works, in public health. And by not having like more of the pie taken up by police and fire, no offense.
Are you saying we're expensive?
No, I'm saying you're the most expensive. But if I can open that up, it gives us a little bit more of that kind of flexibility with that. So that's why, we voted, we had this conversation. We had a work session last June, like June 2025. We did a citizen survey where we asked residents in our citizen survey, would you support, like, do we need more police and firefighters? They said yes. And then we said, would you be willing to pay a sales tax? And the majority said yes. So then in February, we had a work session with our finance and the city council, a public work session talking about this. And then now, we had our council meeting where we put together the plan even more in May. And so, yeah, then we voted to put it to the voters for August 4th. So what questions do you have? I know that was a lot of information in 20 minutes. Like I'm the fire hose, like the fire hose.
Well, I see one from Herb or Sue right off the bat here.
I specialize in right off the bat. I'm going to raise a question that is touchy, critical, um, and was raised by opponents. And I want to emphasize the outset that to everyone that I'm supporters of both these departments. Our fire police chief knows that I'm a former post commissioner for the state of Missouri, certifying and training all peace officers in all departments. And the fire chief may know that I'm proud of my grandnephew, Patrick Hanks, who's just been promoted to captain following the tradition of his father, who also served in the department many years. But here's the issue. The proposed bill on the ballot is a whopping increase in the continuing appropriation from sales tax for each of these departments. Absolutely whopping. Some people have been putting out numbers noting it's over 100% in that particular category. Nailing this down is not quite the issue, though. It's huge. I'm a former budget analyst at the Department of Defense. I didn't deal with huge numbers. I was very young. Today, what I handled would only be about $10 billion a year. But when I went to Capitol Hill with the Chief of Naval Operations or others to defend the request, and I did many times, I didn't often speak, but I was there. We had always to bear in mind the magnitude of what we were asking for in proportion to what we were already getting, and also how detailed was the method of oversight of how the things were working along the way when we would have to go back and ask again. And this proposal doesn't provide that mechanism for reauthorization. Please tell me what percentage increase in sales tax allocation to the departments you are proposing and how you justify not having mechanisms for monitoring that allocation in the future.
So I'd like to answer the second part first, because I have heard that out there, and I have to say I think that is an incorrect assumption on not having mechanisms by monitoring. So not just our annual budget, of which you see the breakdown of income coming in for all of our different revenue streams. You also see the expenditures. We also have our monthly finance reports that show where those go, as well as our quarterly audits that we have going forward and performance audits. And so this is something that is very much monitored, and we're very public and transparent on our city website with finance reports. One of the conversations that we also have is that anything that police and fire want to spend their money on still has to come to city council. Any technology, any new equipment, apparatus, anything that they want to do still has to come to city council. One of the conversations that we've also had is in your point about not coming back up for reappropriation. That's because the majority of those funds that we have go to people. So those dollars are going toward the staffing, the personnel, salary, and benefits for those people. And it would be very hard for them to recruit police officers and firefighters to these positions if they knew in 10 years that they would have to potentially ask for their salaries again, and they might have to lay people off for it's unsustainable. And I'll point to the fact about, I think a big problem of how we got to where we are, and I feel this way, you know how I feel about automated trash collection. I feel like there have been needs in our community for decades, and they have not asked the question to the voters, to leadership, to invest in those things. And so when we talk about this, Herb, I agree, a 1%, because we have 1% now, right? 1% is our general sales tax that goes to those 18 different departments. In that, one of the biggest problems that we've had is that as other cities have done dedicated quarter cent, half cent, 3/4 cent, 1%, as they've done those over the last few years, Columbia has not done that. We have not gone for a dedicated sales tax for the specific purpose. We have not asked the voters to increase. In 2014, I'll correct myself, 2014, there were 2 initiatives on the ballot that were for doing a property tax for public safety and as well as a development tax. Both of those failed. But that's really the only time, besides just the automatic renewal that we've been putting forward for the capital improvement sales tax or the park sales tax. 2004 is when we did the park sales tax. That was the last time we asked for a new tax for dedicated funding. And I think we're woefully past having to go to people to ask for this support.
I think it's 85, isn't it about 85%
Oh, yeah.
is personnel?
Yeah, that's the other important thing I think a lot of people don't know is, of my, $35 million budget for the police department, 85% of that is pay and benefits for people. And so when we really drill down into our budgets, we run the police department on about $4.5 million. So that means gas, unexpected expenses, ammunition. I bring that up because it gets more expensive every year, as does gas right now. Training. Just everything that you can think of beyond personnel is in that pot of money. So that's why when we also hear people, go to groups and they're very concerned that the council's going to try to take away the general fund transfer. It'd be very difficult to take away all that money because so much of our needs are really people-based. And the other side of that reality, I think, too, is wherever we're at right now with pay, like the starting pay for police officers right around $60,000. Well, we know we're behind because we're 9th in the state again. And if I want to move that starting pay up, I also have to move up everybody above that officer because otherwise I compress them all again and they get very upset, and we worked very hard to fix that. So there's a monetary amount attached to that we have to figure in every time we want to adjust pay. And that's a big expense in a department where as large as ours and where our employees get paid what they get paid.
And
I was going to mention, similar to the police department's struggles, we have to, when you call 911, you expect brain surgeons there in 30 seconds to be able to solve your problem. We have to go out and recruit the absolute best, most talented people to come to Columbia and serve in these positions. It's not an easy task. The job is extremely difficult. The job of a police officer, I can't even imagine the amount of stress and the things that they have to put up with. Ours are exactly the same. I mean, we both share the fact that they may not come home at the end of their shift. They have to make life and death decisions, and in some cases they're entrusted to take a life. So it is the most serious investment that we can make as a community. We have to meet the need with appropriate pay and benefits package to keep these people here and to recruit them to come here. And like Jill said, right now, the police department's at the bottom of our comparable cities, and so are the firefighters. We have to, and all of this is about people and talent and keeping them ready to serve you when we get the phone call. Go ahead.
I was just going to add, I forgot earlier, and I don't know if you said one of the other things is I mentioned, I think this has been like, hindsight's 2020. Do I think, like 10 years ago, we probably should have proposed something just to incrementally increase it? Yeah, I do. But one of the conversations that we have too is about when we as a community, right, we want community policing, we want neighborhood fire stations, we want this sort of like relationship with those who are providing public safety. And we're woefully understaffed in delivering that. Even if you had 100% occupant, like even if we had no vacancies in both departments, we still wouldn't have the level of people that we need to have the sort of department that we have. Like, I'm thankful that when we approved for the police academy a couple of years ago, that allows us to train our new recruits to our values as Columbia. And that's really important, but we have to continue to invest in them to keep staying here because we want to have a patrol unit. We want to have the person who responds when I get hit by a person running a red light into a bus. Like, we want to have that. Hypothetically, right? Not that it didn't just happen a month ago.
No.
But yeah, so I think that, and I will tell you, no elected official ever wants to be like, hey, I really want to go ask the voters to increase their sales taxes. Like, no, this is not my dream ask, but I think it's important for us to make the ask because I think we do need to invest locally in our local priorities because I cannot control what's happening at the state and the federal level.
I would throw in there too. I think when we all roundtabled this and talked about the pros and the cons, just to be really direct, I think we could have lowballed the voters and said, let's do a half cent because we know that's going to be more palatable. And I think we would be in the same shape Jeff City's in right now because they passed a quarter cent about 5 years ago, I think, and they have another initiative on the ballot now in November
To increase it.
to increase it. So people are very upset because they're saying, hey, we just did this. What happened? And I think us trying to communicate that there are current needs that exist that are very, very that time is of the essence to try to dig out of these holes in many different aspects. But then we're also trying to, for once, be forward looking and go, how do we solve this problem for the future? Because we have a great problem in this city, which is it just keeps growing. I grew up in St. Joseph. St. Joseph is the opposite. It's losing people every year. It's kind of a dying community, and we're the opposite. And that's great, but we have to figure out a way to keep up because 14 patrol officers on a shift for a city this size and this complexity is just, it's not sufficient.
Well, thanks to Herb for giving a really prominent question that got a
Yes.
big
Yeah.
discussion. Alice, let's see what you have to ask today.
Okay, first I just want to say I respect all the work that all of you, the city, police, staff, city council do, and I know it's tough jobs with complex questions, and then you're dealing with us, the public. I'm going to take the tack that Herb did, is repeat some questions that other people that I respect have raised. You know, basically the question, is this the right time to ask for this much of an increase? We know that there's great need out there, and there's great need in the police department, and there's great need in all the departments of police and fire. And I'm going to also repeat what Chris Kelly said to me one time at an event, that he had a hard time recruiting to Columbia because the cost of housing was so much. So people didn't want to move here for jobs. But the person I'm going to repeat the question he asked was Paul Harper, an attorney with the school board. He just said, I'm going to get my question out there right away. I'm going on vacation. And what he said is, could not have the police department part been in a bond issue? That if you asked for less than 0.5% sales tax, you'd have a funding stream that then you could pull from to perhaps do a bond issue. And then that would lessen how much this would be as a regressive sales tax. So that's my question.
I appreciate that, Alice. And yeah, we did see Paul. And do you want to respond? Because I think we reached out to the finance director about that exact question. You want to talk about your conversation?
I'm trying to remember what all he said because that's a finance world question. So if I'm assuming he's specifically talking about bonding the buildings, which I think that could
Right.
still happen under this revenue stream. My understanding is the city would have to have a revenue stream to base those bonds on. I don't work in finance and I don't pretend to.
That's exactly right. We don't have the bonding capacity now to do that. It would take the 1% funding stream to give us the ability to bond. The infrastructure needs are so critical that we need that money up front. I think the police building's probably
40 million. Yeah.
40 million, and the fire stations are probably 7 apiece. Just from I don't remember exactly what the plan is, but I think they're somewhere between 5 and 7 million apiece. All of that revenue would take several years to be able to capture with the sales tax. So the sales tax will be the dedicated funding to purchase those or to sell those bonds and create a financial platform for us moving forward. So the answer is yes, we are going to bond the facilities. We have to, but the other side to that is we don't have the capacity with the existing taxing structure in the city of Columbia. And that goes along with what the mayor said is all of our comparables have this tax in their system. Lee Summit, Independence, all Joplin, Jeff City, all of the other cities have progressively leaned forward and done that. We just haven't. I'm not sure why. I wasn't here and nobody was here actually in leadership positions that are developing this plan or have developed this plan. But we've got to play catch up, and we've got to play catch up now. Otherwise, the system's going to degrade. The services are going to get more poor, especially in that front line where it really matters. The time compressed situations, we're going to see service degradation as the city continues to push out, and those incidents continue to get more complex and more frequent. We're just not going to be able to respond anymore. I mean, as it stands right now, 2 calls, we're done. Two fires, or a fire and a police incident, an active shooter at the links, or anywhere in the city, we don't have capacity for that next call.
I think too, and I think we talked about the capital improvement
Sales tax.
issue. So some of that goes to our facilities, or has in the past. The problem for my chair has been, like, I've seen the downtown, the replacement of the downtown police station, I think has been in CIP for close to 15 years. And we see how far that's gotten, right? And so we just keep kicking those cans, and every time it just gets renewed, that replacement of that building is just that much more expensive because the construction cost escalates so quickly. So one thing I think this will allow us to do as well is it gets because again, we're expensive. His trucks are
$1 million.
very expensive, and it takes 2 to 3 years to get them once they order them. So we could be kind of come out of that CIP, right? And then because every year I sit through the presentations, and the public works director is overwhelmed because he has more requests for streets and sidewalks than he can fund in CIP. Well, getting us out of the CIP also frees up pressure there to do more of these, because every time we survey everybody, it's always public safety and streets and sidewalks.
So Barb, you're saying if it was just a 0.5 cent sales tax, which would create a funding stream, that wouldn't be enough to do a bond on the police department? Is that what you're saying?
And the additional facilities that we have as well. So police department is part of it. And we also know if police department, that's going to take a few years to build out in the first place. So obviously part of this will go towards that pension buy down, so that we're not having to spend, I forgot what, 28% of your personnel budget has to go into the pension liabilities. So part of it's that, for that sustainability of that. And I apologize, I was trying to look at my email while we were talking, because I know that Jackie did email Paul the answers to his questions, but I don't see them in my email. And I want to look at you guys. I don't want to be looking at my phone.
Okay, thank you.
And I would add too that the buildings are one thing, but the personnel cost is so significant and ongoing that's the other problem. Because if we cut it in half, we went from 38 to 19, and then we're essentially splitting that, right?
Yeah.
That's, I can't do
9.5.
public math, $9.5 million. That might cover the people I need right now. That's no future. That's not, that means we dig out of the hole and then we fall right back in it because there's no plan to keep up with the growth of the city.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what the mayor said. I think I agree. This should have probably happened a decade ago, but we can't. If I find a DeLorean and I can hit 88 miles an hour and go back in time, I will certainly go back and fix that.
And I would actually pay to see that if you could arrange it.
I want to thank you for this discussion of how future bonding depends on this revenue stream. It seems like a very important argument in favor of the proposition. We had a request from Kathy Jensen to explain what CIP is, because it came up a few times.
Yeah. So that's the capital improvement plan. So on Monday, we actually just had a presentation on this. So for us, we do every year any project that's capital improvement projects take more than a year to fund, right? This is like the Nifon expansion, any sort of, well, if we want to talk about the Forum and Green Meadows, like that roundabout, right? That's a capital improvement plan because it takes amount of time to get to. So for instance, in this year's capital improvement plan for just fiscal year 27, we have one thing for public safety, and that is one fire truck. So this because it's $1.2 million and we only bring in so much a year. And so like we have some really major street projects that are in there. You have, I mean, there's the parks, the bridge number 9 is in there for the MKT trail. Like these are your bigger projects. And I agree. I mean, the police chief's correct. We look at our prioritization when we go out to the voters for that sales tax. And we had to take off one. I see Vicky, I don't know if that's Vicky Rebeck Wilson, but Vicky, Rock Quarry Road was on that project and it took half of the 10-year funds. It would have taken it for one project. And so often council and staff will prioritize and be like, I can't give half of that 10-year funds to one project. And I think that's why, sorry, Jill,
That's okay.
the police headquarters has been on because it would take all of the money that we would be bringing in. So sorry, that's a long story short. You can watch Monday's video. If you want to watch Monday's recording meeting, Kathy, we talk a lot about the capital improvement plan on it.
Well, that really ties in well to what you were talking about, this revenue stream in Prop 1 and any future bonding ideas for capital improvement. I'm going to ask a question before I let Herb ask another one, or maybe Sue. And that is, Alice kind of intimated it a little bit. The timing is difficult because of what's happening at the state. Everyone is everyone is afraid that the sales tax thing is just going to take over. I don't know if the chiefs have any reflection on this idea. The mayor, it'd be great to hear her thoughts on this issue.
I will tell you, so this is the most frustrating thing ever because we've been talking about this for longer than 2 years, but specifically potentially going to the voters about a proposed public safety tax. And we've been talking about it for 2 years. And then all of a sudden Jefferson City decides that they want to just blow it all up and try to get rid of everything, which will then change. And we struggled. That's why we delayed putting it on the ballot. We delayed one vote just to try to figure out if we could figure out the crystal ball with what's happening in Jefferson City. And at the end of the day, we just had to go to the voters and ask. Like I think I mentioned it earlier, I just had to ask, would our local community support our local priorities? Because I cannot control what's happening in Jefferson City, in Washington, D.C., any of that. I know the voters are going to be asked in November as well from, a topic for the sheriff. But again, I can't control, like Kip and the county commissioners and I get along fantastically, but we have to all go to figure out what it is that we need and go to our communities to ask to support that. So we just went ahead with it and had to make the ask.
I'll tell you, I try to absorb news from a lot of different sources, and I think it's been really interesting. If I had to, somebody made me bet right now, I don't think 5 is going to pass.
Oh, no.
I think there's a lot of talk on both sides of the political spectrum that just either don't understand it, which I haven't seen a great explanation of it yet, frankly. It's just too many if, then, therefore, this might happen. And I was actually pretty surprised because I saw some of our local Republican representatives posting information about it, and they were getting it from all sides. So I do not think 5 is going to pass.
So,
well, we will hang on your prediction and hope that you're right.
David,
you have
just
to
really quick,
you have to predict life and death matters all the time. So we appreciate that. Any other further thoughts on this? I have a couple questions in the chat, but Herb had his hand up first, so I'll go to him.
Or Sue. I think it was Sue this time.
Sue. When I'm here, I speak up as much as Herb if I can get my word in edgewise. And I've gone to more city council meetings by a long shot than he has. One of the things that wasn't clear to me, even with what you folks are saying, I understand that this 1 cent sales tax is expected to be for only fire and police. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the way that the ballot language is, and it's very similar to the park sales tax.
Okay.
The ballot language is listing that it would be only for personnel and facilities and the needs of the police and fire departments.
Okay. That's a simple question. That's only a very small portion of it.
Oh, okay.
And that's what concerns me. The other departments have a similar problem on recruiting and retention. I am concerned about these two getting favored and not some of it also trying to be flexible enough to serve the other departments in addition. That is a big issue for me, because as I'm hearing what news I get, I feel that a lot of the monies that help to support the other functions of our state, of our city rather, have specifically been targeted to be being reduced. And I don't see that we're covering, having some flexibility to do things a little differently if we needed to 5-10 years down the road.
So I will say, so Sue, we do have a little bit of that in our existing general fund. So I will tell you the reason why we're also kind of having to do this ask is because for the last 4 years, we have consistently been giving raises to all city employees because of that. As a former city employee, right, I knew how important it was that we were paying our trash collectors and our public works and our mechanics a living wage. And so we've been doing at minimum a cost of living increase every year, but also raising the wages of that. And this is a reason why I supported this is that I know Columbia, as we continue to grow, we probably will continue to see an increase in revenues for sales tax. Maybe not what we were seeing in the 2005s, but we will continue to see that percentage increase. And so while we're committed to continuing to do the same levels to police and fire of our general fund, as that revenue continues to grow, it gives us even more flexibility for those other 16 departments to continue to increase wages to public works, to public health, to all of the different departments that we need to support the community.
And I would say too, kind of the safety net I feel like that's built in is every year the budget is a new living, breathing document. So if we achieve our hiring goals, we're on track, we're moving, we're getting our buildings built. You know, finance has done some projections that this would sustain us for future. So then what that allows the council to do is they still have the ability to make that decision and go, okay, you probably don't need the whole $60 million now. You guys have this money coming in from the tax. And so they can start moving that money amongst the other general fund departments.
And the one thing I would also add to that is that when we in 2000 for fiscal year 24, when we adopted the classification and compensation plan, we increased the wages and pay ranges for all city employees, and that helped us a lot with recruitment. So for instance, in public works, for our laborers union, they had so many vacancies, right? Especially in the mechanic shop, in transit. Because of our investment in this, we have increased, and now we are back to our previous routes. Like the bus station is right behind me. I don't know if buses were coming and going behind me, but we have now reduced our vacancies in our transit drivers, in our mechanic shop, all of those things because of that investment. Because we know it's not just police and it's not just fire, it's all those other departments as well.
Well, this is very useful discussion. As I talk to my neighbors about this Prop 1, most of them, are worried that it will be devoted to fire and police because, they think of that at the top of their safety. And yet there are other interests in the city. It's a tough balancing act. We don't ask our safety chiefs to come and address us very often. The mayor, of course, is the spokesman all the time. We figure their supervisory duties over people who are in charge of our safety and need to keep safety themselves, in life and death situations. That makes it a wonderful time today to have them both and to ask this question that Dave Taylor asked. It's a little off topic, but maybe not entirely. He says, what roles can or do volunteers currently play in the police and fire departments? And do they save any money, or do they create a net increase of expenditures for the city? I think he's interested about community involvement and that sort of thing.
We don't have any volunteers in the fire department. And the primary reason why is that the level of training, commitment, and time to be a Columbia firefighter, to be an urban firefighter would take years from a volunteer perspective just to amass that, probably 10 years to amass the amount of experience that a volunteer would need to work in the system. It's highly physical. The standards are high. There are opportunities outside of Columbia in rural areas for volunteer firefighters that may get, 10 calls or 50 calls a year. Not at the same tempo and not at the level of risk that we have here. So we haven't ever entertained that. It's been a career shop, a union shop since 1901, and that's something that we're pretty actually proud of. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, so when I started at the police department 21 and a half years ago, we had a community services unit, and those officers were kind of in charge of our volunteer program. And that slowly over the years kind of trickled away. Some of that's because like Brian said, the getting in and training. I was actually a reserve officer before I became a full-time officer. I essentially worked for free because I was trying to get hired. So I was trying to get my foot in the door. Since that time, if you don't know, the city's self-insured, and the law department and risk management said that's a really bad idea to have people working as police officers for free. So they frowned on that. So we don't do a reserve program anymore. And really, a lot of the hoops you have to jump through to get access to our buildings and our computers. It's a lot to ask somebody to do, especially when they're coming in maybe a couple days a month. What I would like to pivot back to that we have not done for many years is like the cadet program in the schools to try to get young people interested early on, because we do have opportunities for them to get involved and engaged. We can actually hire them when they're 18 to be a community service aide, and then they could transition right over into becoming a police officer when they turn 21. A thing that we did during those years, between Ferguson and the end of COVID, when hiring was very difficult, one of the things we did pivot to really successfully was the civilianization of jobs. So we really focused on what are jobs that police officers are currently doing that we could have somebody in professional staff who's not sworn to. So now we have a fully staffed, I need more of them, but we have all the positions filled, like a crime scene unit. That's trained investigators who just collect and analyze evidence, that go out in the field and do that for the detectives. We have community service aides. We have civilian investigators. We have people who analyze all of our digital evidence that we get on cell phones. We've really done a good job moving ahead with those types of positions, and those positions are much cheaper because they're not in the pension system. So we do try to do some cost savings there, and there's a lot of areas we would certainly like to expand that in.
Yeah, we followed suit with that as well. So our training battalion has civilians, and we've tried to pivot to civilians as much as we can in areas where it makes sense. But interestingly, and I don't know if this is true in police, but they're retired firefighters.
Yes, right. A lot of my civilian investigators, actually, I think all of them are retirees that came back. All 4 of my guys that work in the police academy are all retired sergeants and lieutenants that came back and are starting their second career as a civilian.
But not with a firefighter or police officer pension. So we don't have that expense. They're there because they want to be there. They're there because of the mission, and they're not done. And it gives them an opportunity to still participate and be a part of the organization.
David, I see we're kind of at the end. I do see Kathy's question.
Oh my God.
Kathy, that's a rich question. And if I could talk about like a disconnect between what people talk about in social media versus like the reality, like I feel like I should be going door to door every day and just be like,
Yes.
how can I put out recent myths about what it is we do? And I'll just say, this is a city budgets, municipal budgets, the conversation around public safety and balancing your community's needs with like the growth that it's having. It's complex. And I think part of it is by being open to having these conversations, being vulnerable with asking the voters to invest locally in our local priorities, knowing that it's not an easy one. And so we're trying everywhere we can to reduce costs. When we talk about utility bills coming up, right? What programs are we doing to make the homes more energy efficient? Like all of these things we're trying to take into account from a local government. And it's just complex, and just really appreciative of community groups having us out to talk with us rather than immediately just going to Facebook and putting out, opinions.
Without any substance and.
Oh, Brian Schaeffer, no, some of it has substance.
I'll take that as a closing statement from the
Yeah.
mayor
Thank
that
you.
she continues to try to handle these disconnects and explain as transparently as you possibly can in a big city. Do I have any closing words from the chiefs?
Go ahead.
We appreciate the ability to come and virtually talk to everyone. This has been really good feedback. Just know that this comprehensive plan that we built is built on analytics and the needs from the people that are doing the jobs. It's not an elected official. It's not somebody like Jill and I that ride desks the majority of the time. This is people that are putting out fires and arresting criminals and doing the job. They're asking us to support them, and that was the catalyst for developing this plan.
Yeah, I think, I'm very blessed that I have Brian as a partner in this. His perspective coming from the outside has been very valuable in doing this. I can tell you, I've watched I'm retirement eligible, so I've watched this whole kind of, the crescendo of things in the city. And I feel like I would not be doing my job as the police chief if I didn't come to people and say, this is what the guys and gals on the ground need, not only today, but going forward, because they desperately, one of the best things I can say about our employees are, I don't know how they do it every day sometimes. I mean, when you come on a shift and there's only 10 of you there to work on a Saturday night, that's overwhelming. And we have such good people that are so committed to this community. I know Brian well enough. We wouldn't feel like we were doing our jobs and our roles as chiefs if we didn't come tell you all exactly where things stand and what we think we need to go forward in the future. Because we're not going to be here forever, but a lot of these guys and gals, they have 25 years at the city, hopefully, that we want them to stay here and serve this community. And I think they have true hearts to do that. So we want to support them in that.
Well, we're certainly honored to have the two chiefs here today who, with their associates, risk their lives for our safety. And they have shown us their other abilities in analytics and explanation, which I'm sure their associates also help. It's a great thing. And as always, we're happy to see our mayor getting out there, explaining stuff that has to be explained. And I'm optimistic about the no on 5 and the yes on 1. So I'll join with the police chief with being hopeful about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Have a good weekend.
See ya. Stay safe.
Well, so